Hey folks, and welcome back to the channel, and in this video we will be continuing our preview of the playoffs for the Blast Austin Major. If you have not already checked it out, I have posted videos for Spirit versus Mousesports and Pain Gaming versus Furia, which will be the first two quarterfinal matches that we will see in this tournament. And in this video, I will be breaking down Vitality versus NaVi, which is supposed to be the first match of the second day of the playoffs. Before I get into that, though, if you wouldn't mind, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you are not already. We're looking to build towards that 5,000 subscriber mark, and we've been picking up quite a few subscribers throughout the course of this major. And so, again, I would appreciate your support there if you don't mind. Also, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below. All those things just help feed the algorithm of YouTube, which I don't really understand, but hey, those things I know help, and I am trying to grow the channel, so if you want to support me, that would be awesome. But without further ado, let's get into what I predict will probably be one of the more one-sided matches in the quarterfinals. If you haven't seen my videos already, the other two games I've already done videos on. I do think Spirit and Mouse has the potential to be a very close match. I do think Pain versus Furia could be a very interesting match as well. But I do think there is certainly a heavy favorite coming into this, and that is going to be Vitality, and so we'll start the discussion with them. Now, I could sit here and wax lyrical about Vitality all day long because they have had such an amazing 2025 so far, and they are primed to take home their 7th title in a row if they were to win this tournament, and they would cement themselves as being the first team to hold an era of their own in CS2. Yes, they did lose that opening BO1 to Legacy in Stage 3, but I'm not going to let that take away from the streak that they had going into this major. And to this day, they have still now won 31 best of threes or better in a row throughout the course of this year with a 70-win and 16-loss map record. That is insane. Of course, they have won 6 titles in a row coming into this major, and they're looking for their 7th and their first major as a lineup. Obviously, they have beat the best in the world on multiple occasions to get where they are, and it's all started in Katowice, where they were able to beat amongst the best in the world, and then ultimately beat Spirit 3-0 in that grand final. Then at EPL, they were able to beat Mousesports 3-0 in a best-of-5 grand final. Lisbon, things got a little bit tighter, but still they were able to take down Mousesports for another title, this time 3-2. Melbourne, it was a grand final against Falcons, where they were able to win that series 3-2. Then they went back to 3-0 teams by beating Mousesports in the finals of the Blast Rivals Copenhagen event. And then at Dallas, they did the exact same thing, 3-0, to, again, put another trophy in the cabinet. And across these tournaments, you all know they've won every single series, and so they've won multiple series against the likes of a Mongols, a Virtus Pro, a FaZe, a 3D Max, you know, Spirit on multiple occasions, Mouse on multiple occasions, Falcons on multiple occasions. You name it, they've done it. They have been a phenomenal team across the board. When it comes to their map pool, we haven't seen a map pool like this since the Astralis team of 2018 and 2019 that had their own era in CSGO and went on to win 3 majors in a row. It is true. This Vitality team is the best team we have seen in over 6 years play Counter-Strike. It is truly incredible what they've been able to do with these titles, and their map pool is a big part of it. They are 17-2 on Inferno, so a near 90% win rate on Inferno with almost 20 games played. They also are 15-2 on DusT 2, so nearing the 90% win rate on that map as well, with again near 20 maps played. Then they are 14-3 on Nuke. They are 7-1 on Train, 11-5 on Mirage, and 6-3 on Anubis. Obviously, they don't play Ancient, so that's not coming on the board. They're not trying to play a 7-map pool like a NaVi or even a FaZe to some degree. But that's fine because they cover all 6 maps that are left on the board, and they are elite on 5 of them, in my opinion. And really, it's only because they just haven't played that much Anubis. And then when it comes to their players, we know that they have so much firepower on this team. You have Ziwu, who is, of course, fighting with Donk for #1 in the world for 2025, as he has been their MVP in all 6 titles that they have won so far this year. He's also the top-rated player so far in Stage 3 of the Major and going into the playoffs. He is just a phenomenal player, obviously one of the best oppers in the world, alongside people like Bunacy and Shiro and Torzi and so on. But he also has the ability to flex into an AK and just do wicked damage on the server as an entry rifler. There really isn't another opera like him that has that same capability. Sure, there are some other hybrids out there. Bunacy has a good rifle. Torzi has a good rifle. Shiro's rifle ain't too shabby. And I could go down the list. But ZywOo is elite with the rifle. He might be one of the best entry riflers in the world, and that's not even his main role. And obviously, he can handle the M4 just fine defensively when he doesn't have the economy for an AWP. So, yeah, the dude is just one of the most versatile talents we have in the game, and he is one of the best players in the world. Speaking of one of the best players in the world, his duo partner, Rops, is a top 5 player so far in 2025. He's top 8 so far in the major. Obviously, a phenomenal anchor on the CT side, can also play some rotator positions at times. Obviously, an extremity player, a little bit more on the passive end, but he can make plays when he needs to on the edges. He's really good at finding timings, finding good windows, and he's an excellent trade fragger and clutcher when you put him in those mid to late round situations. Flames, also a top 10 player in the world for 2025, one of the better entry riflers in the world, as well as a phenomenal defensive player. And then you have Mezzi, who's a great role player and supportive element, and a guy who has been willing to kind of adapt and roll with the punches when need be to facilitate other players of the team, especially when Rops came into the roster and they overlapped on some spots. He took the sacrifice when need be, and he can put up really good numbers in his own right. I mean, you're not going to put him in the top 10 or something like that, but I do think that his numbers are actually still pretty damn good compared to other people. I mean, when in theory this guy is supposed to be the 4th best player on the team, he still delivers at a pretty damn high level, much better than many of the other 4s or even 3rds you would name on some of the other teams in the world. And then Apex has been a fantastic leader, a veteran of the game, a former star player in his own right, a former star entry rifler, and he still can pull out the entry rifling sometimes on the T side for this team. And he's also one of those guys where you don't really feel like he's going to be a burden as an IGL in his CT positions like you might see with some other teams out there, even amongst some of the best teams in the world. And he has put up some big ratings in some of these big grand finals games on this reign that they have been on this year, which is really, really impressive. And again, I could go on and on about how amazing this team is, but the numbers speak for themselves. Incredible map record, the series record, the titles, everything seems to be pointing to the fact that they should win this major and they should have the first era in CS2, and they truly do look like the best team we have seen in Counter-Strike since Astralis over 6 years ago. I mean, it's crazy, and tactically speaking, very well-balanced team, can play defaults out well, can be methodical, but also can hit you with the pacing changes, can hit you dry, can hit you with heavy utility. They really just can go through really any type of Counter-Strike that needs to be played, and that's why they're so damn good, because you might be able to scout them, and I'm sure you could find little details and timings that you might be able to exploit to win a round or two, or to get the better of them, but their adaptability is so high because they can play any version of CS they need to, whether it's loose and scrappy, whether it's neat and tidy, it doesn't matter. They are capable of playing it, and that's why they're the favorite to win this whole damn thing. But let's look at their opponents, NaVi. So NaVi obviously came out of 2024 as one of the best teams in the world. I mean, they obviously won the first major of the year at Copenhagen, and they had a streak of like 6 finals in a row where they won 3 of them. They were the winning team of 2024, and they went to the Shanghai Major as a team that had their own chance at having the first era of CS2. If they would have won the Shanghai Major, they would have owned both majors that year, as well as plenty of other titles, and they probably would have been the first era of CS2. They certainly were the team of the year as far as trophies. I thought Vitality was a little bit more consistent because NaVi did have some more placements, you know, outside of the top 5 that Vitality didn't really have, but you could definitely make the argument that they were the best team last year. And they started this year okay. Top 4 at Blast Bounty, top 4 at IM Katowice. You know, they were beating teams like Spirit and Mongols along the way to do this on a couple of occasions, but then things kind of started to fall apart after that. They only placed in the top 8 at EPL after Katowice, losing to Saul and Mongols, and they weren't even competitive in those games, which was probably the more damning part than just the result itself. Then at Blast Lisbon, did a bit better with a 5th, 6th place finish, including a win over Mongols to get a little bit of revenge there. But then they lost to what was then Eternal Fire, now Aurora, and Spirit 0-2, and those map losses were very one-sided. Then in Melbourne, they wound up finishing 7th and 8th place, so going down a notch, losing to Falcons and Team Liquid this time, so really for one of the first times losing to a team ranked below them. And then at Astana, it was really, really tough. Yes, they did well in the group stage, getting some wins over M80, Big, and Aurora, but those are expected of a team of NaVi's caliber. Meanwhile, they lost to Astralis in the quarterfinals and also had a loss to Mongols along the way, once again falling into the top 8 like they had done at Melbourne and EPL, and so we started to see them slip down their rankings. As you can see here, a team that used to be number 1 is now sitting somewhere probably between 6th and 8th place. Valve and HLTV at the time of recording this video had them ranked at 7th. And it's really tough because with their results comes the crumbling of their map pool. They did maintain a strength on Mirage this year, in my opinion. They have a 14-5 record, so a pretty solid win percentage on that map. Last year, they were 27-13, so they've kind of maintained that pace. They've also actually looked a little bit better on Inferno results-wise this year than last year. 9-4 record on Inferno. They were 12-10 in 2024. It's something that kind of slipped on them towards the end of the year, so they kind of got that back into somewhat fighting shape. Obviously, Train was not even a part of the map pool for them last year, but they've done well on it so far when they've had to play it this year, a 3-1 record. But that's where things really start to crumble. On Ancient, they have a 4-5 record this year. Last year, they were 21-12, so they took a massive plummet in their performance on Ancient. On DusT 2, they have a 4-6 record this year, whereas last year they were 13-4. So 2 maps, Ancient and DusT 2, that used to be in their toolbox has now become a burden with a negative win rate. They also are a negative win rate on Nuke with a 1-3 record, and they are 1-5 on Anubis after being 12-7 on Anubis last year. So their map pool has really, really faltered. They really only have 3 super strong maps. They're still okay on Ancient and DusT 2 at times, but it's not nearly as consistent as it used to be. Now, I think the other big problem for NaVi is that their player form has also fallen off. Last year, NaVi prided themselves in the fact that they had a well-distributed amount of talent on the team. Even if they didn't have one of the key star players in, let's say, the top 5 rankings, they had talented players who could certainly fight for a case to be in the top 10, JL and Bit being at the, tip of your tongue when you think of those names. And also, what I liked about NaVi was the fact that they could get an opening from any player on the server. Yes, Emo was their primary entry fragger, but JL and Bit on the extremities could be huge playmakers for them, and they actually had a pretty equal distribution of who would go for opening attempts on the T side, and all of them had a fairly high success rate when they were called upon to deliver in those moments. And Wonderful, you aren't going to put him at the top of your list when it comes to oppers. People like Ziwu, Munacy, Shiro, Torzi, maybe even Woxic, and a couple of other guys would probably come out first when you were ranking oppers, but he was still stable. He was still pretty damn good. And Alexi B, obviously one of the best IGLs in the world from a tactical perspective, could hold his own in the fragging department, wasn't necessarily a huge burden. Obviously, Blade, their head coach, certainly known to be one of the best coaches in the world from a success perspective and from a strategical perspective. And yeah, they did have really a lot going for them. But right now, you would have a hard time placing any single NaVi player in the top 20 so far for 2025. The individual form has crumbled on these guys, particularly guys like JL, like Ema, like Wonderful, Bit, who was one of the best anchors, if not the best anchor in the world last year. These guys have all fallen off, in my opinion. Also, the entering is not there. Well, they still have a good eye test on how they approach the game when it comes to their fundamentals, how they play defaults, how they have their roles established, how they can come in with some heavy utility executes. They call a good game, but it's just that they're not really able to find the opening success that they used to facilitate those executes and get them in those key late round situations with advantages like they have had in the past. Now, I will say JL, Ema, and Wonderful all did okay so far this major, but that's just okay. None of them were really leaping off the leaderboards by any stretch of the imagination, and Bit has been struggling in some of these games, way below the level that we're used to seeing for someone like Bit. And Alexi B is one of the bottom 5 rated players from Stage 3. And while I don't expect him to be one of their best players by any means, he's the in-game leader, he's not meant to do that, to see him that low is certainly a little bit worrying. Also, their T-side entering has just been tough. Like, Bit has been okay. He's taking around 20% of their opening duels and winning 48% of them, but he's not even their main entry guy. And people like Ema, Alexi B, and JL, who are taking the big entries, aren't doing nearly as well. And I think that is a really big problem. Now, Ema has been doing pretty well this major in the entry role, but he's also not been going for as many opening attempts. In fact, it's been Alexi B who's been kind of trying to go for the more hard, sacrificial entry IGL style to try to alleviate some of the pressure off of people like Ema and some of his playmakers on the edges. And I do think it has been working to some degree. I mean, when you look at this major, they had a pretty solid run to get themselves into the playoffs. I thought they played about as well as you could hope for. all things considered, right? I mean, they pretty much handled every test that they were given for the most part. I mean, coming out 3-1, their only loss being, of course, the Spirit, but that's really the only top team that they really played against, right? I mean, their other wins were against Amiga and 3D Max and BO1s, and then a G2 team that's using a stand-in is on the verge of having a bunch of roster changes and is nowhere near the elite level that they used to be. But they can only control what's in front of them, and it's not their fault that they didn't get to play against some of the other best teams in the world thus far to prove where they're at, but it just doesn't look nearly as convincing as it used to be. And they are in a tough spot having to play against the best team in the world and one of the best teams to touch the game ever in CS's history. When you look at the head-to-head between NaVi and Vitality, there's really not too much to see here that really matters. I mean, they haven't played each other at all in 2025. In fact, they haven't played each other in almost a year head-to-head. It was Cologne in August 2024 where Vitality won that series 3-1. Some close maps, to be fair, but yeah, it is just not really any head-to-head history to speak of. And then when you go into 2023, that's just way too far away. You're talking about even different rosters for some of these guys. And obviously, Vitality did not have ROPS when they played against NaVi last year. So if anything, they have leveled up since that 3-1 win last year. As far as how the veto may go, obviously, we know that Vitality will remove Ancient. That has been their permaban for quite some time. Meanwhile, when you look at a team like NaVi, they do try to play more of a 7-map pool, so they don't really have a permaban. They have been more likely than not to ban DusT quite a lot, but they also could ban Anubis. They could potentially look to ban a Nuke. But I know that Anubis is not really a threat for a Vitality first pick in all likeliness, so I don't know that they would go for Anubis pick right away. Speaking of picks, when you look at it, Vitality can really go a lot of different directions here. They can confidently pick into a DusT, into an Inferno, into a Nuke, and they can obviously play Train as well. And in fact, they have actually been picking Train and Nuke a lot recently and not really relying upon an Inferno where that is their best map, you know, statistically speaking, with that 17-2 record, 15-2 on DusT. They try to go for more of a specialist maps like Nuke and like Train. So it will be interesting to see what direction they would like to go into. And so in the end, again, I predict that Vitality will obviously remove Ancient. Again, I think NaVi will probably remove DusT, but they might look to get rid of Anubis or Nuke. At that point, Vitality can really go whatever direction they want. They are just outclassing NaVi, I think, on any map they would like to pick. And I think the third map would likely be probably Inferno or Train if it doesn't get picked by Vitality or something along those lines. I think NaVi would probably like to go more towards a Mirage or something with their pick, unless they think that they can gamble on Train if they've seen something in the film. I mean, look, we talk about how good some of these teams are on Train with the records that they have. You know, Vitality and NaVi are amongst those teams that do it. If you put Fury in there, perhaps maybe NIP, you know, Complexity, we're showing some good stuff on Train, but it is one of those maps that's still kind of newer to the pool, and maybe there is still stuff to be found out that teams haven't yet and can still kind of use it as a wild card factor. But that is going to be kind of how we wrap things up here. I think that I've kind of spelled it out pretty clearly here, that Vitality is certainly the favorite to win this matchup. I think they could easily do it 2-0. I think they could easily do it in a one-sided fashion. Everything points to that. Better results, better firepower, better map pool, better recent form. Literally everything is pointing in the direction of Vitality. You'd be hard to argue for NaVi on any front other than thinking that maybe they have some miraculous stuff they've built up in their boot camp or prior to the major where they feel like they have some type of hard read on Vitality or something along those lines. And yes, they do have the brain power and Alexi B and Blade to come up with a good game plan, but being able to execute it when their form has just not been there in some of their individual players, when it hasn't been there on some of the maps they used to be able to rely upon, there's just no way you can pick them as a team that should win this game. And Vitality's not just the favorite to win this series, they're the favorite to win this whole goddamn thing. And so that's where we're at, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, if you did, please think about subscribing, liking, commenting, all that jazz, and I'll see you on the next one.